Hello, inventors and entrepreneurs. My name is Andrew Krauss. I'm one of the co-founders here at Inventor Groups of America. We have a great meeting for you today with a successful inventor. He's going to show you what it takes to license your ideas for new products again and again. Before we get going, type your name into the chat. And if you're new, type in I'm new. Maybe type your country and the state you're from too, because we have people attending from all over the world. That's always fun. IGA was founded by Stephen Key and myself to teach individuals how to best commercialize their product ideas, as well as strengthen and support inventor groups throughout the nation. As many of you know, Stephen Key and myself also run inventRight, where we coach inventors to license their products. In addition to being very successful, our speaker today is also a former student of inventRight. Everything we do here at IGA is free. Yes, I said free. I'm sure you guys like the sound of that, especially these days. IGA also has a directory of local and regional inventor groups on our website. If you're located near one, we highly encourage you to join. There's not a lot left, but if there's one near you, it's nice to associate and socialize and talk to other inventors. So we encourage you to join your local inventors group. Please do not disclose anything that is confidential and is not directly or publicly available. This meeting is being recorded and will be harnessed on our website and our YouTube channel soon. If you have any questions for us, please type them into the chat. Page down here. Please type it into the chat. We might answer them during the session or definitely at the end. We can't get to all of them, but type them in when they come to you, okay? So today's speaker is Tim Brennan. He's the inventor behind Vivo Barefoot, the shoe that launched the barefoot running movement, and a seasoned product developer with multiple licenses under his belt. Tim will share the design principles and licensing strategies he's used to bring innovative products to market in industries ranging from footwear to housewares. Learn how he took an idea from a student project to a brand that generated $113 million in revenue last year while he pivoted into new categories and why he pivoted in new categories and how to apply the same process to your own product ideas. Whether you're just starting out to license your next product or you've been doing this for a while, he's going to give you a packed talk with actionable items and insights that you don't want to miss. Please welcome inventor Tim Brennan. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you, Andrew, for the intro. Uh, it's great to be back on an inventRight call, and it's great to be with so many inventors. And this evening, I am going to share some slides walking you through the journey that I took since I was a teenager, inventing products and trying to get them into the market. And I hope that some of this will inspire you or help you in some way. And so without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. Let me find the right one. Okay, and can you see the first slide here?
Yes, it looks perfect.
Great. Okay. Let me just bring up something to help me. Okay. Right, so I'm going to talk first of all about Vivo Barefoot. All these shoes that you can see are part of the Vivo Barefoot collection, and they all use the technology and the concept and the philosophy that I created when I was a student. At the moment, as Andrew said, it's doing roughly about $113 million worth of business every year, and it has its own stores. So, you know, in Europe, it's very popular. It's also been worn on the feet of rock stars. And when we were all in lockdown, Joe Wicks wore a pair of Vivos in front of millions of people every morning, and I got to show off in front of my kids. So I'm going to start at the very beginning of where my inventor's journey began. This is me, was about 15 here on the left, and maybe about 16 on the right, and I'm standing next to my tennis coach. And tennis has always been a major part of my life. And I would play tennis every single day since those years. When I started at high school, my projects were very tennis related. So here's me with a tennis ball mower, which I designed and built at the school, and it had a conveyor belt driven by, a chain drive linked to the wheels, and it was an incredible effort. And in the end, I was surprised that it actually worked. From there, I went and studied at the University of Bath, and after that, I went and I did a degree at Imperial College and the Royal College of Art, which kind of took engineers and taught them the skills that they needed to become product designers. Now, whilst all of this was going on, I had a major problem with my tennis because I would twist my ankles quite regularly, and each time I would be out for maybe 6 or more weeks. And I really needed to get back in on court and heal this injury so I could compete. And every time I thought it was okay, it would happen again. Now, at this time, I had tried so many solutions, but one thing that really worked was just to take my tennis shoes off. And I felt like I would never get that injury again if only I could play tennis without shoes. And that wasn't very practical. Lots of tennis tournaments wouldn't probably let me play in their tournament without the right, shoes on. So I realized in the late 90s that I needed to create a shoe that biomechanically was like barefoot, but would look like a tennis shoe. Now, this X-ray shows the difference between a normal shoe. So on the top is your kind of regular sneaker, and it has quite a lot of padding. And on the bottom is a Vivo Barefoot shoe, which has no padding, and the sole is only about 3 millimeters thick all over. So there's no heel, and it's incredibly thin. You can feel the ground. And that's really what I was, um, conceptualizing in the late 90s. So this is the first prototype that I made. It was an old Nike Huarache running shoe, and I stripped it down, cut the sole off, and the first thing that I actually glued onto the bottom was a tennis racket cover, because it was a material that I had lying around and I wanted to test this as quickly as possible. I would go and play tennis in the shoe, and I would wear through the sole pretty quickly and then glue another one on. And I felt like the project was going absolutely fantastic. But there was a problem because the tutors on my degree course said that I couldn't just base this shoe on my experience, because if it's going to be mass produced, I would need some sort of science behind it. And that was one of many setbacks. And I didn't deal with setbacks particularly well. But in the end, it actually was a good thing, as most setbacks normally are. So I went to the biggest library we have here in Britain. This is the British Library um, in London, and it has millions of scientific articles on the shelves. And I spent my whole summer in 2001 just reading lots and lots of scientific studies, looking at people that didn't wear shoes, and was there any benefit? So one of the most interesting studies was done in 1949. Some medical observers went to India and China and studied people who were too poor to wear shoes. And they found that all of the normal health problems that we have in the West with our feet were completely absent in these people. And of everyone they studied, the people with the most perfect feet were those running on hard tarmac and cobblestones pulling rickshaws in China. So this was a major green light for me, and I based my dissertation on that research. I also um, found lots of interesting information about these problems that we have in the West, things like bunions and hammer toe and ingrowing toenails. And all of
Hmm.
these are completely absent in those populations that don't wear shoes. So it's pretty clear that these are all caused by badly fitting shoes, which are the norm. So the next thing that I did was I started cutting up other shoes that I had. And this one had a lace-on sole that could be replaced much more easily. So I didn't have to keep gluing things on and off. Um, and then later on, I introduced a zip to see if that would help. And from my research, I started to formulate all the things that were wrong with shoes that were causing problems and how I would address them in my shoe. So, um, as you can see, twisted ankles, the solution to that was the sole is flexible with no edges. There was lots of room for the toes, so you wouldn't get the squashing effect. Um, the whole shoe was designed to bend. Most shoes are only designed to flex at about 25 degrees, and that can, have implications for collapsed arches, I found. Um, a heel actually tips the body forwards by up to 20 degrees, and we compensate with it and end up with poor posture. And that can lead to knee problems, back problems, and running in a cushioned sole is said to mask the sense of touch we have with the ground. So with a very thin sole, um, I felt like you would actually restore the sense of touch and accurately feel how you were landing with every step. And so, taking action so you wouldn't overload the body by bending the knees, ankles, hips, whatever you needed to do, you would feel that shock and, take action against it. So here are some sketches from my sketchbook. I don't consider myself at this point a very good sketcher, but I just needed to kind of think things through, and I always wanted to improve my sketching. So I just kept drawing as much as I could. Here's another sketch of getting a little bit better at sketching of a concept, and here's another one showing the sole unit material. So I started using a finely woven Kevlar, which would resist puncture from pins, glass, so that if you trod on something sharp, it wouldn't go through the sole. And that later on was the basis of my patent. Here you can see a cross section of the sole unit, and it's got a 3 mm thick with some layers of Kevlar um, stuck to that. Here are some shoes that this is really as far as I took it at university level. Um, and I came up with the name Vivo. It was a name that was very apt because in scientific research, in vivo means science done on a living thing. Now, I designed the whole shoe on my feet, and so I felt like Vivo was a very appropriate name for that. And I graduated and ran into another setback because after my degree, all I wanted to do was to play lots of tennis tournaments. And pretty quickly, I had no prototype shoes left. And I had to go back to wearing the conventional tennis shoe. And my injury came back worse than ever. And so I decided that I would reach out to as many shoe manufacturers that might be able to produce a tennis shoe that I could think of. And mostly I got no response at all. I got a couple of rejection letters. And as I learned later on when I joined InventRight, that these companies were much too large. And, I should have really been looking for much smaller companies. So my luck turned one day after about 9 months of fruitless pursuing this licensing. I was playing a tennis match, and at the change of ends, my opponent saw my crazy looking cut up prototype shoes with holes in them, and he said, "What are you wearing?" I told him a bit about the project, and he said, "That's very interesting. Here is the number for one of the Clark's family, the shoemaking family, and here's their cell number. You should give them a call." Now, I'd been through 9 months of rejection, and the last thing that I really wanted to do was have another one. So, whilst I told my tennis coach after the match what had happened, um, I didn't ring them. And about 2 weeks later, my coach said, "How did you get on with the Clarks?" And I said, "Well, I never rang them." And he said, "We're going to put the phone down now, and you're going to ring that number straight away." And I promised that I'd ring them. And before long, I'd met the Clarks. They loved the idea. And here's a picture of Galahad and Lancelot Clark outside their small shoe shop. They owned Clark's, but they also owned another small shoe company called Terraplana, and it was under Terraplana that Vivo Barefoot was produced. So we went from, I met them in March 2003. By June 2003, we were showing samples at a trade show, so it happened extremely quickly. And these are the samples that we showed. I was heavily involved in the development, going from sketches, putting those sketches onto a 3D model, which is called a last, which is, is covered in masking tape. And I just sort of drew those lines in pencil. And then we sent those designs off to a factory. And from that, they made the sample shoe that you can see on the right. We started putting together some marketing material, showing off the technology. We filed a patent with, based on this puncture-resistant technology, and we came up with some marketing as well, getting this idea across. And so that was 2003. We launched early 2004 to the public, and for quite a few years, nothing happened. The volumes are very low, and I was pretty disappointed. I didn't think the shoe was ever going to, reach the big time. So I wanted to have a break from all of the designing, all the inventing, and I started working as a film extra. And to this day, I still tell my kids, even though they're not that impressed, that I've been in 3 Harry Potter movies. I met Tommy Lee Jones on the first Avenger, the Captain America film, and so I had a fantastic time being in all of these movies, but I was dissatisfied because I really wanted my inventions to be out there. Now things started to change around 2010 and maybe 2009 because a best-selling book called Born to Run came out, which really got the whole philosophy that I was trying to promote into the mainstream. And not only did that happen, but um, the science was picked up by Nature Journal. And even though it was science that was going back to 1949, maybe even 70 years beforehand, but the Nature Journal had picked this up and ran a front cover talking about the benefits of bare feet. So the sales went through the roof. Every year there was kind of, maybe growth was almost double. And I started to be able to live off the royalties for the first time. Terraplana rebranded itself as Vivo Barefoot, and that is how the company is branded today. I sent some shoes off to the referee at Wimbledon, and he, to say thank you for the 3 pairs of shoes, he invited me to play on the practice courts at Wimbledon. So I got to play there. And I gave a pair to my sponsors through university, which I was sponsored by the royal family. So this is me and my wife at Buckingham Palace meeting Princess Anne and having a brief chat. And that was, a really great experience to have. So why did the project succeed? I made it an option to not quit. My injury had to be solved one way or the other, and that was the most important thing, and that drove me past all of my setbacks. I was very lucky to meet the right person who gave me that contact. And the Clark's family have deep pockets with great connections. So whilst the business has had some really big downturns, their deep pockets have managed to keep the company in business through those major setbacks, and the business now is seeing the fruits of all of that. And I didn't know at the time, but I seemed to have found a big problem that wasn't being addressed. Okay, so this is sort of fast forwarding maybe 10 years. So I decided I really wanted to learn how to license something. So I joined inventRight, and I took all of their principles and I followed them to the letter. And housewares was one of the industries that they recommended. So I developed maybe 15 different products. And in the end, I managed to license this mandoline, which is made by Joseph. It does approximately 100,000 units every year. And I think that the main feature of it is that it has improved safety over the other mandolins in the market. So I'm happy that I've made some improvement to this kind of product, which is very dangerous. I think most people won't have one because they're so dangerous. So I'd like to share a video. I think the audio should work on this. I want you to listen to the audio, because what inventRight taught me was to use the format of as seen on TV. So what I like to do is show black and white footage for about 9 seconds, showing a problem, and then immediately afterwards I show the solution. And the words have to communicate really clearly and succinctly, and it's a format which I think is very powerful. If the audio doesn't work for some reason, just wave, but I think it should work. I'm going to play this video now.
If it doesn't work, Tim, you can just unshare and reshare and then click the button that says share audio, but we'll give it a try here.
Got it. Okay. See how this works. When peeling vegetables, you have to go slowly because it's so easy to cut yourself, but even then, the risk is still there. Introducing Steady Peel. Allows you to peel up to 3 times faster with 0 risk of cutting yourself. Simply insert the fork into your vegetable and you can peel as fast as you like with no accidental cuts. When not in use, the 2 pieces combine, keeping all sharp edges out of harm's way, so you'll never cut yourself when rummaging in a drawer. Steady Peel is simply the fastest and safest way to peel. Right, so I was really proud of that idea, and I showed it to everyone at the trade shows. Let me see if I've got what's my next. When peeling vegetables, you have to go slowly because it's so easy. Okay. So this is me with Stephen and some other inventRight coaches and other inventRight students, and we were all in Chicago, and I was very jet lagged in this photo, but I was having a great time. And I walked the show and I showed everyone my mandolin. And off the back of that trip, I showed everyone my peeler. I'm getting ahead of myself. I showed everyone the peeler, and off the back of that, I got some interest, but every one of the companies that was interested in the end passed. And it was pretty disappointing. And one of the last companies to pass was Joseph. They had a meeting with me in person because I live in London, they're based in London. And they brought me in and said, we're really impressed by, your product, your design skills and the idea, but there's two problems with your product. And my sort of heart sunk, but I listened as best I could to their feedback because I'd been taught by InventRight that the feedback is like gold. So they said, first of all, there's two tools really, and so it's going to cost twice as much as every other peeler on the market. And they said, second of all, if you ask most people, they're not really that concerned about peeling as being dangerous. The thing that people are scared of is mandolins. And that's why we don't have one at the moment in our product line. And so they said, if you can do a mandolin, we'd be really interested in seeing that. And so I thanked them for their time. I was, very professional, but inside I was, disappointed. And, it took me a good day to get over that. So after some coaching from my inventRight coach, I decided to get down to finding out what mandolins are and what's so dangerous about them. So this is a conventional mandolin. They were invented because someone cut the tip of their finger off. Um, I think it was a soldier cut the top of their finger off, and so one of the soldiers realized this was a great way to cut vegetables because it was an extremely efficient way to cut vegetables, but it's also extremely dangerous. Now, the reason why people use them still is because you can get very consistent cuts very quickly. And that for a chef is so important because it changes the way that the food tastes and the way that it cooks. Here's a mandolin being used. You can see it has a handguard, which is kind of shaped a bit like a hat. And that handguard design is brilliant. It was developed in the 1960s. And when I came to this project, there had been no real improvement since the 60s in the handguards. Now, the one problem with the handguard, even though it works really well with potatoes and other vegetables, is that for some vegetables like a pepper, it doesn't work because it doesn't really hold the pepper properly. So what people do is they get rid of the handguard and just try and be as careful as they can. And most of the time it's fine, but if you make the mistake once, then you end up in the emergency room having stitches, and it's a terrible injury. So I set about creating prototypes, and this was pretty much as far as I could get, hacking up some kitchen tongs, 3D printing some parts, and trying to make something intuitive to use, but would, really grip anything and mean that you could never, come across a vegetable that you couldn't, grip. But it didn't really work that well. And after about, 3 months of trial and error, I had kind of thought this 1960s design of handguard, I don't know if it ever could be improved. And then was doing a little bit of market research one day, and I came across a blog all about well, it was about all sorts of things, but there was one post that was all about one trip to the emergency room. Someone had accidentally cut themselves using a mandolin, and they wrote very specifically that the safety guard for the food doesn't work well, and it brought the whole thing home to me that this product had to succeed because people were getting hurt. And even if I could save one person's fingers, then it would be worth the effort. So I set about making prototype after prototype, even if, I, you know, was pretty sure that the prototype wouldn't turn out to be anything. I just had to get it out of my head, make it into a real object, and these were some of the prototypes that I made. Eventually, after so many prototypes, I was able to produce this video, which had a solution which I felt worked really well.
When chopping vegetables with a mandoline slicer, some veggies are just too large for the handguard. Others are too soft. And cutting lengthways means lots of stopping and starting. Because of this, people ditch the handguard to get a better grip. But with zero protection, nasty mandolin injuries are far too common. Introducing Safe Slice, the mandolin that keeps your fingers safe. The secret is in the patent-pending handguard that adapts to any size and shape of vegetable. Simply wrap around and you're good to go. Safe Slice gives you an intuitive, direct grip of your vegetables as you slice. Even the most awkward sizes and shapes can be gripped with ease and safety. When you need to cut lengthways, the handguard transforms to give you a rock-solid grip with no stopping and starting. Safe Slice, the mandolin that keeps your fingers safe.
So as you can see, it's the same as seen on TV format, showing a problem, immediately showing a solution, and you're trying to keep it as simple as possible so people can really get the whole idea within 20 seconds or so. So,
When chopping,
okay, so I went back to the trade shows. This time I went to Frankfurt. There was a huge houseware show there, and then I also went to the Chicago show for a second time. I showed it to every company in Europe and America, and I thought, okay, I'm bound to get some interest, and I did. I got lots of interest, and in the end, there were two companies that wanted to do a deal with me. One was American, and another one was Joseph. So Joseph liked the idea, but they really wanted to keep it a little bit more simple. So we just really went with a really simple idea that the wraparound part was all that you needed. And with that wraparound spring sort of gripper, you could get pinch, push, and wrap, which were the kind of fundamental ways that people hold their vegetables. And this was the idea that they wanted to run with. So I repitched it to all the companies based on that feedback. And as I told you, I went back to Chicago, pitched it to everyone, and ended up going through a very lengthy negotiation process with Joseph. It took about 18 months to finally come up with a contract which we signed. And here you can see the sketch that I brought to them and the final product. Since then, that mandolin has now got a couple of line extensions. So it has the larger mandolin down on the bottom left here, and also a couple of different handle and colors that you can buy as well. And much to my delight, there have been some great reviews. People are appreciating the safety features. I must point out that it still is dangerous, but a lot less dangerous than the other offerings, I think. And yeah, someone who's chopped off the end of their finger 20 years ago, avoided them ever since, but then came back to them with my invention, which I think is a great testimonial. Why the project succeeded? I had great mentors. There were so many times, especially when I got that feedback on the peeler, that I didn't feel like carrying on, but following the inventRight process, listening to my coach, I got through that and came out with a win. I took the time to find a group of people who were suffering, and that really made it worth getting out of bed every morning to do the work. I showed my idea to every single company at the trade shows, which is what inventRight told me to do. That made a huge difference. I kept going in spite of setbacks. And although I had, 15 ideas before this, I'd spent 5 years making connections in that industry. All of that hard work paid off when I finally found a target that the industry had been looking for. So thanks very much for listening. I'll be happy to answer some questions if you have any, or however you want to do it, Andrew and Stephen.
Yeah, go ahead and stop sharing your screen. Stephen, you go first.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tim. We've known each other for a long time. It was wonderful for you to walk through this journey with everybody, so thank you. So Tim, here's the big question I had for you when I first met you. You had this big hit. You're changing the shoe industry, but you signed up for InventRight. I was like, why? You don't need us. Why did you do that?
So when I licensed the Vivo Barefoot shoe idea to the Clarks family, I didn't really feel like I knew what I was doing. My negotiation skills were very poor. I was highly trained. I was a graduate engineer, graduate product designer. I didn't know how to negotiate, and I didn't like that. And I felt like that was a crucial skill that I needed to master if I was to win at this game.
Okay.
And so I read One Simple Idea, and in the first chapter or so, I was reading about how your experience of licensing was fantastic. And I thought, well, I want to have Stephen's experience. I want to be winning at this game. And after I read the book, I was asking my wife, should I sign up for inventRight? I don't know this company, and what if it doesn't work out? What if it does work out? And she, after I'd talked about it for a few days, she said, listen, just pay the money. And I never regretted it one bit, because it was everything that I'd hope it would be.
Well, thank you for saying that. I remember, because of your skills, we had to kind of change your thinking a little bit, hadn't we? Because you were trained to really look at all the details. But
Yeah.
we had to say, look, that's great, but first of all, your benefit has to be great enough, and you need some tools to show those benefits. I remember that conversation very clearly.
Yeah, that knowing about the details is great for manufacturing, but I feel like it gets you so close to a product that you can't see the marketing angle that you need. And so I still, have that a little bit, but I can kind of step into different shoes. So I can go really deep with manufacturing, and then look at it from like zero. Like, how do I get this idea across? And the as film and TV format that I showed was another brilliant thing that I got from being a student at InventRight.
Tim,
Stephen, one of the things that I really liked about Tim on why he succeeded, and I see a theme here, whether he's saving people pain with their feet or from losing their fingers. Tim, can you comment on that? Did that keep you going because you felt like this product is truly going to help people? Does that, and have you done any products that didn't do that? Both of those products, the mandolin and the Vivo Barefoot, do that like in spades, like big time. Could you still have the same energy for a product that's just a fun product?
Yeah, I mean, so some of the products that I pitched before I got my deal with Joseph were novelty kitchen, and I still like doing novelty kitchen products, um, but I think it's not my major strength. But I still think one day I will have a novelty kitchen product out there,
Cool.
because they're just, especially if you've got kids, or kids in the family, you can make them laugh with your products, and I love that. So I should mention at this point that my wife has also successfully licensed her designs, and so she is an artist who block prints onto fabric, and we licensed a collection of 5 designs using the inventRight principles to a major manufacturer in London, who supply Buckingham Palace with fabric. So they are, the top end company. We also licensed the designs to a tile company, and so yeah, those are nothing to do with my design approach. That was Maria's doing, and we used it to negotiate and to come up with a contract.
Tim, let's talk about early on when we were talking about you need to go to a trade show and you didn't want to travel.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like, Tim, you got to get out to this trade show. Do you remember those? You're like, I don't want to travel because it's
Yeah.
for the world to travel. And I said, no, you got to come over.
I had 2 young kids. I was sleep deprived. I didn't know, if I could. I hadn't traveled very much, because I didn't want. I wanted to. I was limiting my carbon footprint which is something that's dear to my heart, as much as I possibly could. And I thought, if I can do this without going to a trade show, it'd be fantastic. And then I think there was, a webinar talking about trade shows, and there was one in Frankfurt which I could take the Eurostar to. And when I remember being in Frankfurt thinking, this is so good, I've got to go to Chicago now.
Yeah.
Just got to do it. And yeah, whatever it took. So I was jet lagged, sleep deprived. I think I lost my luggage. I think my luggage was stolen.
Yes.
And
Yes.
but to be greeted by inventRight coaches at the other end, and to see familiar faces, it made it so easy to go and do those shows.
Hey, before we open it to some questions, I think Andrew hit upon it. You have a big desire to take on projects that can really help people.
Yeah.
And you got another project that it's a really big one again. And
Yeah.
maybe you're a little ahead of the curve again, because with your shoes, you were way ahead of everybody. You were 20 years ahead of the whole industry that's finally caught up to you. But you're doing something else now that's kind of the same thing, isn't it? Can you talk a little bit about that, or is that very confidential?
Yeah. So I'm designing chairs that help people with back pain, or rather prevent back pain before it even starts.
Okay.
So I believe that back pain is caused by the furniture everyone sits on at school, and no one realizes it, even the teachers.
Okay.
And so I have a habit of believing that I've got something that everyone else has missed. And if you go to my website, it's actually like the quote that I have next to my name, that I look for things that everyone else has missed. Because I feel like those products you can look back on at the end of your life and feel like you've made a huge contribution. And I feel like it's important to do other products as well that can pay the bills, and maybe the mandoline's a bit more like that. But what really fuels my motivation to go the distance and change an industry is to find something that is massively painful and not being sorted out, and won't be sorted out unless I do something about it.
Amazing.
And how, I won't get into all the details, but how important is to make probably one of your big goals, you don't have to talk about the details, but is to keep that cost effective. So if you want it in schools, there's a lot of chairs, right? Replacing all of them, very expensive. You have a big task ahead of you. Not only do you need to solve the problem, but you need to do it somewhat cost effectively. And that's probably a big challenge that you're facing right now, is my guess.
Yeah, well, with the school furniture, there's no margin at least in the UK, there's no margin in those products. So to build in some marketing to educate people and to promote the product, it's a very difficult thing to do. So the way I'm approaching it is I'm designing other chairs to start with that do have a margin,
Hmm.
educate the public through the marketing of that product, and then circling back around to do some other school furniture. So the latest chair that I am working on, I had to show it to 100 companies. I got 100 rejections before I found one company that would
No,
take it.
wait a minute. Why doesn't that crush you? Why doesn't that stop you?
Well, I think it's because I know the problem. My kids have been progressively coming home with worse and worse posture,
Okay.
and that really hits home. And it's not just my kids; it's everyone's kids come home. They start school with great posture. They come home after they finish school. Their posture is awful, and then they're set up for a life of back pain, neck pain, headaches. You know,
But
poor
Yeah, I
breathing.
guess he
It's
answered the
terrible.
question, Stephen. What he's saying is the cause is so important. That's what keeps him going with these,
yeah,
especially with these
Mhm.
products, you know.
Yeah.
what I find it interesting when I share, I think the rejection letters I've received, and they've been in the hundreds before, and I think everybody's really shocked. They're like, they get a couple of rejections and they want to go off to a new idea. And what
Hmm.
they don't realize that, getting a few rejections should never stop you. If you really feel deep down you've got something, keep on going, and you can get there. But if you stop too early, and I think a lot of people do that, then you won't see that success that you really want to have that impact.
Yeah.
Andrew, let's get to some questions.
Yeah, I think
But
we just
before,
answered Richard's. Richard just said 9 months of fruitless searching. What kept you persistent during these 9 months of rejection? I think we just answered
yeah,
that one, right?
I think so
Okay.
Yeah.
too.
My twisted ankles had to be solved one way or the other.
This is a detailed one, but interesting. Keith says, since Joseph and Joseph did not have a mandolin in their product line, were royalties paid on the entire product or just the holder piece?
The entire product.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, let's see.
Now, wait a minute. Before you get there, I remember when Tim called me and said, look, Joseph wants me to design this. I don't want to do that. I want to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm like, wait, Tim. They told you the target to hit. Why don't you just hit the target? And he goes, I know you struggled with that, but once you hit it, it made it
Yeah.
much easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember where I was. I was looking at the River Thames. I'd just come out of the meeting. I remember having that conversation.
yeah.
Herb said, did you patent the mandolin design before you showed it at the trade show?
PPA, so patent pending. Yeah.
Okay. Just a lot of people thanking you for sharing your journey. Keith says, why was the negotiation with Joseph and Joseph so long? Typically at InventRight, we notice the typical is 1 to 3 months. We do see those brutal 10-month negotiations. Yours was, you said 18 months, right? I remember
Awful.
this. So why was it so awful? It sounded like they've licensed products before. Why was it so hard? You only share what you want to, of course.
Yeah, I think they're good at negotiating, and we played the long game. And yeah, they're a seasoned company, and yeah, that's the reason. But
I have to say one thing. Tim's gotten very good at the negotiations. Maybe not at the very beginning, but I'll tell you, he hung in there with Joseph because I'll tell you, it was really hard. It went long, but Tim, you hung in there, right?
mm,
And it was a long game. But
yeah,
I remember when that was happening, it was a little frustrating. I know they
yeah,
were playing tough. But
yeah, those sorts of things. I mean, I guess without InventRight, who knows what I would have settled for in the end. But just keep going, keep making moves, keep talking.
yeah,
Yeah,
Hmm. This one's really good. This one is specifically for you, Tim, very much so. Tim's shoe design was radically different from conventional sports shoes. How did he craft his pitch and benefits to get the attention of licensees? So the question is, which I think you've answered somewhat during your presentation, when you have such a radically different product, now every inventor thinks their product is radically different. Some are and some aren't. But if an inventor that's listening right now has a really, really different product, that can be a problem, right? So how do you pitch that differently? What do you do different when you have a product that's like that?
Um, so I did make a sell sheet, but it was like 5 pages long, and I think one of the sort of like headlines was it was to do with that the problems people have with their feet are all in um, shoe wearing populations, and I can't remember the wording because that's not as well crafted as what I did, but it's really getting that point across that everyone who wears shoes have got these problems. Everyone who don't wear shoes, they don't have the problems. And so it's, really, but I think what I would do differently now is kind of bring it back to the product rather than bare feet. So I kind of like walk someone through my whole philosophy, and in the end, I found someone, Lancelot Clark. He had been wanting to do what he called the six-toe shoe for 25 years, and this was his opportunity. So it was almost like he'd been waiting for this idea,
Mm.
and I
Hmm.
think when you send someone a sell sheet, it's pretty much like that, that there isn't a lot of convincing. It's a lot of just delivering and are you a right match? Are you already aligned the same way that I am? And when someone is, things move forward pretty easily.
Would you say it's good not to talk about how special and unique it is, but rather to sell the benefits, which it sounds like that's what
Yeah,
you're doing. There's nothing like it. It's super special. It's like that doesn't mean anything, but you're
yeah,
selling the benefits. You made your case on why this is beneficial and why people will want it.
yeah. That was really hard because the normally you'd have to have a 15-minute conversation with someone to tell them why cushioned soles aren't always the best idea in the world, and going the opposite sometimes is has benefits. So it's kind of going against intuition, and to get that into a really short sentence. I mean, I think now the tagline for Vivo is feeling is believing, but even still, there's still a lot you can say
Mm.
to get someone round to the idea, which really why there were 6 years where the royalties were really low, because the story was it needed a lot of unpacking,
Mm.
and I feel like the chair is pretty similar to that as well, but it struck a chord
Mm.
with certain people.
Mm.
Well, I'm going to send you all these thank yous and all these nice things people are saying. We don't have time to read them all. Stephen, did you have another question? We're going to start the Q&A with Kevin in 5 minutes here, but we still
No,
have a
I
few
think,
minutes.
no, I just want to say that my relationship with Tim has gone way beyond coaching, I think. Um, we've become really good friends over the years. We've actually seen each other at trade shows and even in Northern Ireland. And it's just been a joy to watch it and to watch your growth, but to watch you navigate this world that you're in. And I do appreciate every time you reach out to me because I always like to hear what you're doing. I think you're an amazing individual for doing that too.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, it's really been a pleasure. I can tell you that. Uh,
Oh, that was my pleasure. Thank you, Stephen. It's the path less traveled, and to find a bunch of people who are so supportive for people who trying to make the world a better place, believe in that someone needs to smile a bit more or solve a problem. It's brilliant. I'm so glad to have found you.
Yeah,
yeah,
Stephen,
people.
you got to meet up with Tim in London when you traveled there, didn't you?
Well, not in London, but Northern Ireland.
It was in Northern Ireland. Okay.
Came over to see me. I was doing a talk, but the
Right.
one thing I don't think they realize that once you make connections with someone and you have the same mission, it doesn't just stop one day. It never stops. People think that, well, I'm part of a program and it's over. Well, no. because you came together off of something you truly love. That conversation continues and it just gets better and better. So that's what I really love when Tim reaches out to me. It's like, okay, what's going on, Tim? What are you doing? It's really kind of fun stuff. So I
Yeah.
just want everybody to know that. Um, so Tim, thank you so much for coming on. I know we've got Kevin Prince coming up, but thank you for sharing that story. It's truly remarkable.
Oh, my pleasure to share it if it can help anyone.
I
That's
do have one
pleasure.
last question for Tim from Frank. Frank said, what do you do when your manufacturing costs are too high compared to the competition? With the mandolin, it looked like your initial design was going to be more bulky, more costly, and then you ended up coming up with that simpler design, but had the same features and benefits, I think, for the most part. But what is your general advice when you're realizing the product to be, because you have a background in this, right?
Yeah.
What's the general advice for the average inventor that's listening, doesn't have your background, when they realize, oh God, the way I designed this thing, it's going to be too expensive?
So I take great interest in how things are made. Everything around me, I pretty much know what material, how it was made. I like I mean, I guess if that's not your wheelhouse, then it's important to find someone who knows. So as I'm designing things, I think about how it's going to be made, and if something's going to, like at the moment, the chair is quite small volume, so molds are going to kind of like put it at a disadvantage because the company won't see their investment anytime soon if I have everything injection molded. So I've had to completely rework the idea with minimal molding and using vacuum formed parts, parts cut from sheet materials. There's I'm sure there must be some good books on this subject.
Yeah,
Really matching the product manufacturer to the company and what they're going to do volume wise, what they're already doing in terms of their tooling. That's a big part of the process.
I think there's a lot of things that inventors can do that don't have your background. Stephen, you remember that student we had? We won't get into specifics, and she had a toilet paper idea, and you were like, I don't know if this can be made. And we just did a quick YouTube search on how is toilet paper manufactured, and she instantly realized this product could not be made. Um,
Yeah, I think what Tim's talking about takes it to another level, right? And
right.
I think even today, given the environment that we're in, that you have to take your work to another level a little bit. And you can do that by knowing the manufacturing, the most efficient way to make it. What, so you're very aware of cost. I think that's even more important today than it ever really has been.
Hmm.
And I do think that's another level of really showing a company that you have that knowledge and you're trying to help them by providing that information right off the bat so they can make good decisions very quickly. So I think it's just smart. And even today, it's even better to do that. Yeah.
If you've
Tim,
got a product and it's using twice as much material, it's normally it could be twice as much to the consumer. So the weight of the material and the material that it's made from, those two things are a really good starting point.
we need to do a group shot here, guys. So let's do this real quick. You're gonna like smile, give a thumbs up, whatever, and then I gotta do a couple pages. Gonna go real quick here, guys. Okay, here we go. All right, there's page one. Smile. There we go. Page two, page three. Nobody's on video. Okay, great. Thank you,
Yeah,
guys.
I think this is one of the best webinars we've had. I truly do. And I'm sure. Give me a thumbs up if you guys agree. I tell you, just very inspirational, fantastic stuff.
Very professional. Very, yeah, it's just
God,
amazing,
you
Tim.
set the
Thank
bar a
you.
little high here, Tim,
I
for the
know.
next guy to come on. So
Yeah, well, so Steven's going to introduce Kevin here. So thank you so much, Tim. If you guys could, as we do the next half hour with Kevin on patent question and answer, before you leave, please type your thank you to Tim. Try to make it more than just thanks, Tim. Try to make it a little special. Write a little something for him. Give it a little thought. I'm sure he's going to really appreciate that, and we're going to send it to him at the end. So, Stephen, why don't you, thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
You
Thank
got to
you.
come back, man. I mean, like, I don't want you going more than a year before you come back again. That was amazing.
Well, hopefully we'll
Please.
be with a chair next time.
That would be great.
That'd
That
be
would be
great.
great. Yeah.
Okay, everybody. Everybody knows Kevin Prince. I've known him for 20 years. The guy's one of us. He cares. He's an inventor. He's smart. He actually gets stuff done in such a way that he can prove that his work is successful. And that's really rare. You know, Andrew, I've asked quite a few patent practitioners to show me their successful students, and they struggle with that. And when I asked Kevin to show us all this, you know, all of his clients that have been successful, there's thousands. There's so many of them, and that's extremely rare. And I think it's because they keep coming back. They keep coming back to Kevin when they need that help, and they know that Kevin's going to be aware of the uniqueness. He's going to look at it from a different pair of eyes, from not only from a legal perspective, but maybe from an inventor's perspective. And that's very unique. So, but I also want to say that Kevin does my work. Thank you very much for doing my work. You do a great job.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. And he does in such a way that it has huge value. And I'm really happy that he's willing to come on and share all this stuff with you guys for the next 30 minutes or even longer on how to help you. So stay tuned. Kevin knows what he's doing. And he's, like I said, I highly recommend his work. It's spectacular. So Kevin.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephen. I talked to one of Kevin's clients 2 days ago, and he let me know that Kevin's filed 15 patents for him. So you don't keep coming back to your patent agent if you don't like him, file 15.
You know
I was like, 15, really? Wow.
It's impressive.
And it's funny, everyone always asks, is there a volume discount? And it's like, in what I do, there's no economies of scale. It's not like making a product, you know, over and over again. So every one of them is unique, and it just takes a certain amount of time.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to exit out, but thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. All right. So guys, we've got a couple different ways you can ask questions. You can type them in the chat. So you click on the chat button at the bottom to open that up and type them in. You can also, if you click on the participants panel, I forget, you can virtually raise your hand. So there's a digital hand raise. Actually, we're going to get out of the spotlight so we can see everybody, because that's going to be better that way. And there we go. Okay, good. So you can digitally raise your hand, or if you're on camera and you're on the first page, you can go like this. Let me make it so that you guys just can unmute yourselves too. So we'll go with the questions first. We don't have any in here. Does anybody want to just jump in and ask a patent question? You can just raise your hand before we start getting some into the chat. Anybody have one? There's no such thing as a stupid question. No such thing at all. So why don't I wait while we're waiting for some questions to come in? Nobody's virtually raising their hand. Or oh, here we go. Brad said, "Should I have my provisional patent reviewed?" He wrote, I think he wrote by accident. Should I have my provisional patent reviewed by a provisional patent before I submit it? I think he means by an attorney.
By a professional, someone.
By a professional, yeah. Kevin.
Yeah, well, that's not a bad idea, especially if you haven't written patents before, because they're kind of a strange type of writing. And, you know, a registered patent practitioner, like a patent agent like myself or a patent attorney, will have a different way of reading your document. So when I'm doing a review of a proposed PPA, a provisional patent application, what I do is I just take the Word document and I put track changes on, and I just start writing comments in line with, you know, suggested changes, or maybe you should add this, or maybe not say it this way. And, you know, then the inventor can take or leave any of the suggestions that I give, and I think hopefully have a better document to file, you know, at the patent office, if you're filing it yourself, you know.
Cool. We'll answer Jeff's question, and then we'll jump to Connie's in the chat. Jeff, go ahead and unmute yourself. And ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you
Yes.
great.
Okay. Good.
Go ahead, ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I'll just share a little bit of experience I had and just ask for maybe some guidance. So I did a PPA on a product.
Is it just me, guys, or is he cutting out?
No,
Like,
I lost him, I think.
we lost.
I have a
You were
bad
there
connection.
for a second, Jeff, and then we lost you. So I'll go
Got
ahead and
to-
remute you, Jeff. Oh, now we can hear you again. Go ahead.
Okay. So I don't know if you got the beginning of that, but yeah, I did a PPA for a product, and then the finding a company took some time, and by the time I'd negotiated a contract, sort of the 12 months was up, and then I sort of made the mistake of not doing anything about it, and the company ended up taking a prototype of the version of my design to a trade show. So now I don't know where that leaves me, because what should I have done to I guess to protect myself, and how do you keep writing something, because some of these processes take a long time. And I mean, in the end of the day, that particular company ended up passing on the idea. So I'm kind of back to square one, but I've got my product having been exposed at a trade show and my PPA having expired. What do I do now?
You made a key thing that you didn't say earlier. The product being exposed at a trade show part was different if you didn't say that. But I'm going to let Kevin answer. He's going to
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is, as soon as you think that expiration date you're not going to be able to file the non-provisional by the expiration date, file that same provisional again, even if there's 2 months before the deadline, because you want to get the earliest filing date that you can. And when a PPA expires, it just disappears. It's as though you never filed it. So just completely erase it from your mind. Now, what are you going to do? Well, you should file a patent. So file the same PPA again as soon as you can if you know that that first PPA is going to expire. So that's one thing. The second thing is, I don't know if you had a non-disclosure agreement with this company, but if they exposed it at a trade show and you have a public disclosure, the big problem there is that you lose your patent filing rights in most countries. Any country that does not have what we call a grace period, it would now be too late to file a patent in that country, like China, for example. Now, in the United States and a handful of other countries, we have a 1-year grace period. So if it's not been 1 year since that trade show, if it's been less than a year since the trade show, I would file that PPA again today if you can. And that will give you some time to, get the non-provisional written and filed within the year. And you may have to explain to the patent examiner, if there's public, knowledge of that product being out there at that trade show or wherever. You may have to explain to the patent office that was your product, and that way that'll activate the grace period, and they won't count it against you. But yeah, that can be tricky when things like that happen. My cousin, in fact, had a firearms product that he was selling for, I think, 50 weeks. And he calls me, should I get a patent on this? And it's like, okay, we got 2 weeks to get your patent done. We got 1 year using the grace period. And we went ahead and filed that patent. And what he didn't know was that one of his beta testers had uploaded a video about a month earlier of how to install and use the product. And so the patent office found that, and we were dead in the water. And my cousin didn't know about that video. So yeah, so you have to be careful about these deadlines and any kind of public disclosure, and make sure the people you're showing it to, if you want to maintain the secrecy, that they understand that. Usually you do that with a non-disclosure agreement.
Thank you, Kevin. You said that really, really well. One of the things that people trip out on quite often is that they have an idea, they file a provisional, but they didn't make any public disclosure at all. They did nothing with it. And you can just file that provisional again. So for those of you that haven't made public disclosure, selling it at a swap meet, offering it for sale, publicly putting it up on a YouTube video, any kind of public disclosure. Tim had a question. Go ahead, Tim.
Hi, Kevin. Nice to meet
Hey,
you.
Tim, nice to meet you.
I have been playing with ChatGPT, and the way that I've been doing is just writing the way that I would normally write my PPA, and then giving it to ChatGPT and seeing what does it do? Does it make it sound more professional? Does it correct mistakes? And I'm wondering if there's any pitfalls for using ChatGPT. Where do you think we're going to be in the future with AI? And can we use AI for, patent drawings? And I'm just really interested in those tools.
Yeah, I've been following this. I've been fairly impressed with some of the tools. I use some of the tools myself. The thing you got to be careful about is with just a general chat GPT license, they don't say that that's private. And so, who else is reading what you're typing, right? You don't necessarily know that, and you want to probably keep that a secret. So you have to be really careful about even if you're using Google Patents to do a search. I mean, you're sending your idea basically to Google. And do you trust Google? Do you trust, OpenAI? I don't know. So that's one consideration. In terms of the work product that I've seen, I'm pretty impressed with the text, like the general descriptions that it can do. It can do a great job with backgrounds and kind of setting up the scene. I've not been super impressed with the claims. If you haven't tried to write claims, they might look great, but I'll tell you, I think they're about 90% there. And I always have to go through and really scrub them. I think we'll probably get better, obviously, as the years go on. But from the text standpoint, I've been pretty impressed. And then in terms of drawings, I know they're trying to do work on that, but it's really hard for a machine to look at a drawing and know that that's a gear or a worm gear, or it's just, I'm not sure that they're there yet, and I know they can't really produce drawings other than very simple flowcharts. So I would say certainly use tools like that if you're okay with how private it is, and if you're developing a disclosure or even a PPA, they might be fine for that. But I would really be careful with having it write your claims on a non-provisional. I don't think they're there yet.
Thank you, Kevin. We'll get to Herb in just a sec, Herb. I've been watching some really amazing videos about AI. Scary, but also amazing.
Yeah.
And one of the things I watched yesterday, it said that this gentleman was saying that AI will double its intelligence every 5.5 months. So what Kevin's saying now, 6 months or a year from now, could change. I don't know. If you want to scare the hell out of yourself, watch a bunch of videos about what's coming with AI. It's exciting, but it's scary. It's all the above, but it's not going to go away, and it's going to be a part of our lives. I use ChatGPT. I'm using O3 now. I use it probably about 25 times a day, just for random thoughts I have. It's the most amazing thing for inventors. I have random thoughts. I want to know about an industry, a product type, list of companies. It's just getting smarter. I'm not really concerned about the privacy thing. That's not legal advice. I mean, like if you're just doing like a simple kitchen gadget or something, you're using it to brainstorm or research something, I don't think it's gonna like see your idea and then go like that AI company is gonna go steal like what? Now if you had a new technology for a new lithium battery that's gonna go worldwide, okay, maybe not, and that's not legal advice, but I would say hold back on the inventor paranoia because it's such a great tool, but some of it might be a good idea to be careful about what you do or don't do there. I think it's your personal decision.
Yeah, and I think you still need to be a skilled operator to do the final patent that because I do have to massage the results quite a bit. But hopefully that'll become less and less.
Well, one of the things we were talking about in our inventRight coaches meeting yesterday is that one of our coaches, Courtney, was noticing that a lot of our students were using ChatGPT and they weren't doing the right prompts and they were coming to wrong conclusions. And I'm very much a person that asks a lot of questions. So I'm loving ChatGPT because I ask lots of questions. I'm very detail oriented. But she's like, oh my God, people are coming to all sorts of incorrect conclusions because they don't know how to ask the right questions to the
Yeah.
AI. It's
And I asked, I think this was Chat GPT. I asked it to give me the top 10 sports figures that are inventors listed on a patent. And it came out with, Michael Jordan and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and all these like lists and what their patents were. And when I looked the patents up, they had nothing to do with them. I mean, it was absolutely just fabricated. It was what they call a hallucination. And so you have to really be careful what facts that it's telling you, are those actually facts? It's good to double check those.
yeah. Herb, go ahead. You need to unmute yourself. Just hover over your image and then click on unmute. You hover over your, there you go. You got it.
Thank you. This is the first time I've been with you guys. It's a very enjoyable group from what I can tell. I am a very, very, very old inventor. So the question, I've been doing it for a long time. The question I have in the PPA, since, I was inventing before PPAs, and now that the PPAs are out, I've never been that comfortable with them. And so the question I have is with the guy that did, Tim, I think his name is, for the shoes. He got the PPA before he went into the trade show, and which had, of course, helped. Once you go to the trade show, it started that 1-year clock, and I couldn't tell if he was able to get all his stuff accomplished within that year or how he handled that. But what really concerned me was when he went in there, the company that he dealt with changed the design quite radically, and did it go outside of his PPA? Was he just real lucky that they wanted to keep working with him, or why didn't they just take it without him? I mean, that's kind of the concerns with some of these companies that, they get the idea from you, and if you're not protected properly, they don't really need you other than the idea. So that's kind of my concern on the PPA aspect.
Well, that can be true on a non-provisional as well, right? Regular patent, if they start changing the design and it goes outside of what claims you've written, are they going to say that that's their invention now and not yours? They might. So part of that depends on how you engage those companies. And I know one of the clauses you can have in a licensing agreement is that any derivations or improvements that are made are assigned back to you as the inventor, and then folded into the licensing agreement so that the company can still make that product. So a lot of that depends on that legal aspect of it, in terms of what are they willing to obligate themselves to, or is it just strictly what your patent says? And if it's just strictly what the patent says, then you got to be really involved in the development and be filing maybe multiple provisional applications. You can file 3 or 4 provisional applications as improvements happen over the months, and then roll them all up into the final non-provisional application.
Yeah, and I guess that's a problem I always had with a PPA, is the fact that you have to keep filing these things. It's like a first to invent, as opposed to in the old days, when you had a whole year to make changes and show it, and and things. It just you come up with what you think is a great idea. You run out. The PPA, I guess, is handy a little bit, as opposed to just running out and patenting it. But the problem is by the time you're done with messing with the darn thing, you've changed it so many times. Now you got 22 patents for
yeah. Well, I want to comment on that really quickly. The big problem, that is a problem, but the big problem is when inventors file patents and they develop products, but they don't know how to venture it themselves, or they don't know how to license it, which is what we teach people to do. The time's going to run out. So that's the bigger problem. That's the thing I see over and over again. People file the provisional, they get the warm and fuzzies, they're protected, and then the year runs out because they made no efforts to try to license it because they don't know how. So educating people on how to license products if you're going that direction, or venturing if you're going that direction, and not just filing patents and then being upset that they're running out, that's the most important thing.
And I would say the PPA is actually a good option, because what's the other option? File multiple regular patents? That's a nightmare, because not only is that a lot more expensive, now you have all these patents working through the system. at least with the provisional, you can have multiple provisionals and then roll them all up into the final non-provisional, and then just work that one. You know?
I have to stop right there. You're never going to hear a patent attorney or agent, another one saying that, except for Kevin being honest with you, because he's trying to sell patents, right? And he's just being so nice and honest about that. I freaking love it, Kevin. That's really nice. You don't hear attorneys saying that very often, so thank you.
I mean, my dad was a big inventor. He had 35 patents, and you know, on one, we were working on a dental product, and I think he had 3 provisionals filed, because every 3 months he would come up with some new brainstorm.
Right.
And so he'd want to get that into the patent office, because that's the filing date that matters for that particular new feature. You know, a lot of people say, well, if I file a provisional and then I make a bunch of improvements and then I put all those in my non-provisional, you know, am I protected back to the original PPA date? And the answer is no, because you're not protected for what wasn't in that document. You know, so you got to, if you're innovating, you know, and every 3 months or 4 months you come up with something that's important enough, throw it into your provisional, file it again for $65 at the patent office, and now at least you have a line in the sand. You have a filing date, and that's the important thing. I remember before the PPAs, I think that was like 1994 that the PPA started, and it was really, a lot of people were confused by it. But really, if I may, there's 2 advantages to a provisional and 1 drawback. The advantage of the provisional, the first one is that it's less expensive usually to start. And so it can be a little bit easier to get patent pending with a provisional. And second, it gives you that year to put the finishing touches on the product, because, you know, if you've made 3 or 4 improvements over the year, we haven't filed the non-provisional yet. It's not too late to put those in the non-provisional. So we'll roll all those into the non-provisional and then get that filed. So those are the 2 advantages. The drawback, the only drawback of the provisional, is that it delays your patent. You know, if it takes you 10 months to file the regular application after you file the provisional, then presumably your patent's going to issue about 10 months later than it otherwise would have if you just went straight to the non-provisional to start with. So anyway.
Yeah, but in the old days, you didn't have those issues at all, because it wasn't the first to invent. You just had to be the invent. You could go a whole year marketing it and everything, and it didn't hold you up, right?
Well, you'd have to prove with your inventor's notebook and all that. And in reality, that was a lot harder to do than in theory. And but all right. So let's see. Miguel said, "Thank you, Herb. Is there a guide to follow that can help us structure the information you need to file the patent/provisional?" I love the fact that a provisional can be written in common English, Kevin. I think a lot of people, when they say, well, you could file a provisional patent, and they've looked up patents a couple times, and they see patents, they're like, I can't do that. It's like another language. And they don't realize that they don't need to write it like that when they write a provisional. And they're like, oh, okay, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have to have some sort of structure or rules.
Right. So there aren't any standard formats, if you will, for provisionals. But my theory is that, the closer it looks to an actual patent application, the better. Because if it's tested in court 5 years down the road, the more it emulates what a patent application should, a non-provisional patent application should look like, the less possibility there is for confusion, and the less likelihood there is that you kind of left something out. So the important thing in a provisional is to explain how to make it and how to use it. And if you can do that, you're probably writing a sufficient provisional. I think, in patents, they'll say a picture is worth 1,000 words. In patents, it's actually worth 2,000, because when you show a drawing or even a photograph and you're pointing to the different elements, like this is the pulley, this is the motor, this is the belt drive, and you're pointing to all those, and then you're giving them reference numbers, and you're referencing those in your description of those figures, it's very clear. And there's a reason those are done that way in patents. So yes, you can just do a free-form provisional, but I would try to make it look as much like a patent application as you can. And I always tell clients this, look, I would rather have a possibly inadequate provisional application filed early than a professionally written application filed too late, because we're on the first to file system now. So yeah, your self-written provisional may be tested in court 5 years, 8 years down the road. I'm involved in a case now that's 13 years old. I wrote the patent 13 years ago. And so, you know, you don't want to skimp. You want to try to do the best job that you can if you're writing your own provisional. And I think the more clear you can make it, the better.
Kevin, can we talk about provisional patent drawings for a second? Because you brought
Sure.
that up, and you know, I want to restate what Kevin said. He said you can write out what you're protecting, but if you have a picture and you're referencing it, then somebody's unmuted. Let me just hold on. Who's unmuted?
Yeah. Yeah, I am Ashutosh from India. I just wanted to, hi everybody. I just want to add
We'll get to you in a second. Okay, there we go. Okay, sorry, I muted you. We were having a discussion. Okay, so what Kevin is saying is you can write up what you're protecting, but if you have some pictures and you reference those pictures and you're talking about it, or maybe Kevin, if you forgot to reference it, but it's in the picture, you can state that as protection later. One of the things we teach people in InventRight, because and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Kevin, patent drawings, which you know a lot about, are very specific. They have to be done in just a certain way when you do a full utility patent. But with the provisional patent, they don't have to be done just a certain way. They could actually be, and this isn't what we advise, they could be a picture, it could be a sketch. You could scribble on a piece of paper with crayon if you wanted to, and they would accept it. What we advise at InventRight is that you don't pay a professional patent drafter to do a patent drawing for you, but you kind of make it look like a patent drawing. So it looks very professional when you're presenting it to professional licensees or people are looking at it. But it doesn't have, patent drawings are so specific, you know, it doesn't have to have that. Kevin, what do you think of that advice? Is that a good idea?
Yeah.
And is it okay? What do you think about somebody just taking a picture of their prototype or different angles? They could, if they wanted to, include a picture.
Sure. But you got to look at the question, like, why are non-provisional application patent drawings done the way they are? Why are they, you know, black and white line art drawings, professionally drawn? And it's because the goal is so that it's clear what the subject is that we're talking about in the detailed description. And the danger of just a photograph or, you know, a crayon sketch, which would totally be accepted by the patent office because there's no, you know, there's no standards really for provisional drawings. But the danger is in that court case 5 years from now, is it going to be clear? Is your photograph fuzzy? How do we know that's the pulley versus the wheel? You know, so you're going to have to look at it that way. There's a reason why patent drawings are done the way they are. And again, the more you can get towards that, the better. You know, if you hire someone on Fiverr or something to do a line art drawing, that may be better than a blurry photograph.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really good idea. It's very affordable. You can get people to do line drawings. You don't, if you go out there on Fiverr and you say, I want patent drawings, boy, that's going to be expensive. You say you want a line drawing, then it's going to be cheap. And it creates a very professional appearance.
Yeah.
Tim, did you want to say something on that? You look like you had something to.
No, I was just reading lots of comments, but no, I like to use Blender to create. Normally when I'm making prototypes, that's, you know, I repurpose the CAD file to make a drawing, and you know, you can use photograph and trace it if you have an Apple Pencil. That's another way of doing it that I sometimes do. And whatever is kind of clear and gets the point across is a good way of doing it.
Thank you, Tim. Robert said cost for a PPA. Sometimes people aren't clear on that, Kevin. A micro entity is $65. Can you talk about just real briefly?
Yeah, so the patent office has made different tiers of what they call entities. Large entities, which is like, Microsoft or any large company with 500 employees or more, pay the highest fees at the patent office. Small entities under 500 employees pay the kind of the middle level. And micro entities is pretty brand new. As of 2013, they established micro entities. And the reason they did that was to help the little guy, make it easier to file patents now that they're going to a first to file system, which was, before that we were on a first to invent system. And so now there's pressure to file the patents. And so they made micro entities a status that pays even less to try to help out the little guy. And so the fees for a provisional are $65 for a micro entity. Oh, micro entity is anyone who has filed fewer than 5 non-provisional applications in their lifetime in the US. Okay, so the PPAs don't count in this, which is nice. Design patents are non-provisional, so design patents count, and of course non-provisional utility patents. So if you filed, as soon as you file your 5th one, you're now forever a small entity. So welcome to the club. That's one criteria. And then the other criteria is micro entities have to have made less than 3 times the median household income. So now they're making us be accountants, and tax guys and try to figure that out. But the median, 3 times the median household income last year is like 241,000 and change. And that's gross personal income, not household income. So if you made less than that personally, and you have fewer than 5 non-provisional applications filed in the US in your lifetime, you're a micro entity. And so you can take advantage of the fee reduction, which is 50%. So you pay half of what the small entity fees are, roughly half. So for a provisional, it's $65 for micro entities, $130 for small entities. And that's on top of our fees, by the way, if anyone's wondering. And then for a non-provisional utility patent, the regular patent application, it's $400 for micro entities. And if you file it electronically, which pretty much everyone does, it's $730 for small entities.
So let's see. Oh, so here's a really philosophical one. Myriad, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Will patents become obsolete?
Well, they expire, if that's the question, right? So
I don't know if he's saying like, one day nobody's going to care about patents. There's that movement. Some people are in that movement.
But I don't know what I don't know what the other option is. I mean, I see people, who kind of poo-poo patents, and they're like, they're only worth the money you have to defend them, and these kinds of things. I don't know what the other option is, though. How does the little guy balance the playing field against one of these big companies? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not a perfect system, but I think it's the best we have. And I have seen patents really help inventors become successful. And I've also seen patents that ended up not helping inventors. So I think you have to use the tools that are there. A patent is really just a barrier to entry for your competitors, right? You're putting up a barrier to try to stop competitors. There's other barriers that you can use too. You can get exclusive supply agreements with your supplier so that they won't sell them to your competitors. There's lots of different ways of putting blocks in front of your competitors. Patents is one of those. Okay, so you don't like patents, don't use them, but I don't really know what the better option is.
Now we don't know what the question really was. That's one aspect of the question. The other question is, how long do patents last? And obviously, if you came up with an improvement to a product, you could keep it going beyond the standard length. So can you talk real briefly on how long patents last?
Yeah.
And
so you
talk about the maintenance fees too. A lot of people don't understand. Oh, there's other costs.
Yeah. So utility patents. Well, let me talk about design patents first, because those are pretty easy. A design patent, which protects the way something looks as opposed to the way it works. When you file that, you're patent pending, just like you are with any other application. And it takes the patent office 12 to 18 months to allow it. Typically, 95% of the time they allow those. And then you get, once the patent issues, it's good for 15 years from the issue date. and there are no maintenance fees with design patents. So once you pay the issue fee, that's it on the fees. If you're looking at, you know, what we charge after the whole process, you're like $1,700 for 15 years of protection. That's just over $100 a year. I think there's a lot of bang for the buck for design patents, if it makes sense for your product, you know. Now with utility patents, which is what most people are talking about when they say patents, the official time is 20 years from your filing date. Now, if you file a provisional, and then a year later you file your non-provisional, your regular patent application, the timing starts 20 years from your non-provisional. So a provisional kind of gives you an extra year of patent pending status. Some people look at that as another year of protection. It's not really protection, but we can talk about that in a second. So 20 years from your filing date. Now, if the patent office takes a long time, which is not uncommon, they will give you extra time. So you'll see on the front page of patents sometimes that it was filed on, you know, January 1st, 2000, and they're going to add, you know, 587 days to the term. So instead of expiring 20 years from the filing date, it's 20 years plus the 557 days or whatever they give you extra. During that life of that patent on the utility patent side, there are 3 maintenance fees that are due, and they go up to into the thousands. It's kind of silly to even say what they are now, because by the time you get there, you know, it'll be more. But just to give you an idea, the 4-year maintenance fee for micro entities is $430. Then there's an 8-year that's due 8 years after the patent issues. It's $808, and the 12-year maintenance fee is $1,656. And those are basically double for small entities. So, you know, hopefully by then the patent is paying for itself, right? I mean, if you're not making any money on this product and don't pay the maintenance fee, the patent will expire early and go on to your next product.
Can you talk about, from a strategic standpoint, I'm sure you've done this with some of your clients, and how do you make it last more than 20 years?
Well, yeah. So the patent office gives you a limited monopoly, and it's limited in time. They don't want to give you more time than the 20 years. So if you do improve the product, then that improvement has to be patentable over and above what you had originally, because your original patent is going to be used against you, or could be used against you as prior art. So the improvement has to be significant. The other thing I'll say is that, you know, during that time that the patent office gives you this monopoly to make and sell your product, that's when you should be investing in your trademark, you know, in your brand name. So I'll give you an example. My former business partner, Len Fish, he's the inventor of Silly String. And he was looking for a way of replacing packaging peanuts. He hated packaging peanuts, you know. He thought you could just squirt this stuff in a box, close it, tape it up, and ship it. It would be better. But he found out it was a lot more fun to squirt people with it, you know. And so he licensed it to, I think it was Whammo. And the patent ran out in the mid-90s. And so they had a good run. And the brand name Silly String is obviously very valuable. Now, if you go into a party store, you'll see Silly String. I mean, it's the same stuff. They can't call it Silly String. They call it, you know, confetti in a can or string confetti or something like that. It's the same exact chemical, but it's not the Silly String trademark. And so really you want to use that time that your patent is active to invest in and make valuable your trademark, because trademarks can last forever. You can renew them indefinitely. How long has Coca-Cola had their trademark? You know, 100+ years, right?
Yeah. We're going to get to Michael first. Tush, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. He said 3D drawing is also accepted provided they're drawn in a line drawing. So when people are outputting from CAD, what kind of, should it be flat 2D? Should it be 3D? When they're putting something into provisional, they can do whatever the hell they want, Kevin. But what do you advise? I mean, generally to make it look as much like a patent drawing as it would normally be, right?
Yeah, if you can make it look like a line art, black and white line art drawings. A lot of times we'll see renderings from CAD systems that have grayscale. Grayscale is not good because it's hard even for the patent offices back in the 18th century, I think, somehow on all these drawing things. But, you know, when they replicate that drawing and they shrink it by 75%, that can screw up grayscale pretty badly. So they want black and white line art drawings if you can. Now they will accept renderings under certain circumstances. They'll even accept color under certain circumstances, but it has to be that there's really no other better option. So a lot of car manufacturers will show renderings of their contoured fender, right? And the best way to show that is actually with a really nice shaded rendering out of a CAD system. Really hard to do that with line art, actually.
Yeah.
So there are situations where they will accept drawings that are different than line art drawings.
But what if we haven't got this point across? We're going to get to Michael here in a second. So far, what we're saying is, when you're doing your provisional patent, if you make the drawings kind of look a lot like patent drawings, it looks very professional. That was one of the first things Kevin said. We just want it to look like a regular patent, because sometimes when you're licensing, it's a marketing manager, it's a CEO, it's a product manager, and they're not looking at patents all day long, but they're not looking at it and go, this looks weird. They're looking at it and going, this looks like a patent to them, right? So don't underestimate the importance of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Michael.
It's not just the patent office that's going to be looking at these. Sometimes you have to show investors or, would be licensees. And so the less red flags, the fewer red flags you can have in your PPA, the better.
Go ahead, Michael.
So 2 quick questions. Earlier, I got the impression people were talking about the first to invent was better versus the first to file, being that first to invent allows you to have a notebook, write everything in. Then when you get all done with your invention, then you can finally put your PPA or your non-provisional in. But in my opinion, I think first to file is much easier for small inventors, because I think first to file is easier to license versus a first to invent. Because I think a first to invent, a company would be more apt to not want to even hear your idea because they could be working on something similar. And I'm just kind of wondering if you guys agree with that.
Well, look, it's been 12 years since we switched to first to file. And, there was all these horror stories like, oh, the small inventor is going to be destroyed and stuff. But there's a lot of tools that make it relatively easy to file provisionals. And they're not, I know for us, they're not as expensive. So, I don't know. I don't mind the first to file, because it's like, look, you got to get your thoughts down on paper, and however you do that, even if it's photocopies of your inventor's notebook, send that in with your $65, and you can say patent pending. It may not be optimal, but to me, and I know the patent office likes it a lot better, because they were getting involved in these like discovery of who invented it first, and let me see your evidence, and then the other guy brings his evidence, and now all they have to do is look at the date stamp. Oh, who filed it first?
Yeah,
so it kind of puts a flame under us to get, kind of get our stuff together.
It was just weird before. I ran an Inventors Association in Silicon Valley for 14 years. I've been doing InventRight for 25 years. So I remember the days we'd have speakers talking about the Inventor Notebook. You have to record things just this way. And
sending a letter to yourself.
Yeah. Well, that's not valid. The mail your idea to yourself, that's been disproven. That doesn't work back in the day. But and I think inventors just like that they could have a notebook. I'm secretly going to screw this big company over if they take my idea. And in reality, it just never, I think statistically, if you looked at it, it never really played out. It was very hard to enforce. It's very easy to enforce if the patent office got your provisional patent on this date, and it's all right there. And I think in theory, it was kind of fun. An inventor that didn't have 2 pennies to put together could write it down in their notebook, and they did it in a certain way and document it. And in theory, but it really almost never worked out that way.
Yeah, the way I look at it now, Andrew, is like, in the inventor's notebooks, you had a place for a couple of witnesses to sign.
Right.
And now it's just that the patent office is the witness.
Yeah. Which is a better witness.
I think it's probably easier to work with that. Yeah.
And $65 to me, if you don't have $65, get your act together before you start inventing. I've had people tell me they can't afford a provisional. I'm like, what do you mean, $65? And that's fine. If you don't have that money, get your act together, get a job, get some money coming in. You can do licensing of products very affordably, but you can't do it for $0.
Developing a product is not inexpensive.
No.
Just the fact.
Yeah, guys, we've Kevin probably has a bunch of patents, right? is my guess. We went over 18 minutes. The dude is like super busy. Kevin, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, just go to quickpatents.com. There's a link on there to set up a free 30-minute phone call. I'm happy to talk, get you oriented. If you need a patent, great. If not, I'll try to point you in the right direction. That's probably the easiest way. My direct email is kevin@quickpatents.com. And you know, I can usually answer emails pretty quick. So those are the best ways.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Tim, for hanging out. That means a lot that you wanted to hang out. I'm not surprised because Kevin.
Great presentation, by the way. Really motivating.
Thank you, Kevin, and thanks for your help as well.
And thank you, everybody, for the great questions. Michael, was there something you wanted to say?
Yeah, just a second question, if I may. It's if you take a drawing and like sketch it to create like a line drawing, but then later on you discover, gee, the picture I originally started with was actually copyrighted, but you now just made a line drawing of it and it's in your patent and it's now published to the world. Is there now like a copyright derivative concern that
could be
I've got some issues? Okay.
It could be. You generally want to have original art.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you're literally just tracing the outline of a product and then adding your difference, nobody would ever know.
Probably not from a practical standpoint, but the question is it a derivative work? You know, that's
right. Okay.
That's the key copyright phrase.
Yeah. Well, Kevin's smart. He gives the legal answer, and I look at it from a practical perspective. I'm like, how would that ever be a problem? Inventors come up with some of the most weird like scenarios in which they're going to get into trouble or something is going to happen. I'm like, I've been doing this forever, for decades, and I've never ever seen that. Could it happen? Yeah, you could get struck by lightning too. But Kevin's a legal professional, so he needs to give the legal perspective.
Just to say, I'm not an attorney. I'm a patent agent. I'm an engineer, so I'm technically like a patent attorney, but only for patents.
Right.
So I probably shouldn't even talk about copyrights or trademarks.
Yeah, well, you're fine, Kevin. I'm not worried. All right, guys. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everybody, for the great questions. We're going to call it a night. We'll do this next month, or a night for Tim, a day for us. And take care. Keep inventing, everybody. See you. Bye.
Thanks, guys.